Hey Arpit, how are you?
Hey Jayant, doing well. How are you?
Good. I guess welcome to both of us to the podcast.
I think it's a re-welcome, given we shot the first episode ages ago, and then we finally got together to shoot the second episode right now.
Yeah, I call it a dry run. At least that's what I'm calling it now. But we've become really dry since the last run. Maybe that's what we should call. We should call this podcast the dry run.
Yeah, we have a few working titles, right? One was what, all-rounders, and
Correct.
the other is pitch rapport.
Pitch
I think
repo, pitch
yeah,
repo.
probably end up with one of those. So
Yeah,
welcome to
yeah.
pitch rapport slash all-rounders
Slash
uh,
working title.
slash
It's
working
it's.
title. Uh, I think
uh,
we didn't do this the last time, which is what are we going to talk about on this podcast and why are we doing this?
Yeah. So at least I guess you and I have been just been randomly talking cricket for a long time. When back when you were in Boston, we played together, and since then, like you and I have just been generally talking about both personal cricket experiences and also about the teams we support, the teams we hate, the players we like, and from time to time, I have the privilege of also getting hard or not to be answered trivia questions from you. So it just felt like a good idea to come together from time to time to just talk what's on our mind and also bring other people together. Both you and I have friends, colleagues, relatives, even family, wives who put up with us with all of our cricket tragedy and heartbreaks and euphorias.
Yep.
So I thought it should be a good way to bring that all together and just talk about whatever is going on, whether personally or to do with the world of cricket. At least that's what I'm looking forward to. How about you?
Yep. Likewise, I think we're just two cricket enthusiasts with, I don't think, any respectable cricket opinions, but we just end up talking so much about cricket that we thought it would be a great idea to record it. And if there's anyone out there who thinks or talks about cricket the same way, we just want to share it with those folks. So that's kind of the broad idea. It's just going to be our weekly musings just put on record.
Hmm. Indeed. Speaking of weekly, you were telling me yesterday that you didn't even realize that India is right now playing a T20 and one day international series somewhere. So have you managed to catch up with it?
Yeah, so I think the weird part is that I am generally extremely glued into every single series happening, and not just India, but non-India as well.
Yeah.
And for me to have completely missed that India was going to play Zimbabwe before we go to Asia Cup was extremely surprising. We've now had this really packed calendar with multiple India teams playing in
Yes.
different parts of the world.
Yes.
So yeah, I think I've managed to catch up with it, finally getting to see who are the players who are in the squad who are
Yeah.
playing there. I think
Yeah.
India Zimbabwe series could be a good segue for that. But I want to start off with just asking you about what's your sentiment about this new Indian strategy of a billion captains, a million players who are playing, and having multiple teams out there for each format. And I think from what I read last, until August 2027 or 2024, I think August 2024, there is Indian cricket in action for every single month of the year.
Wow.
How are you processing this?
Talk about milking the golden cow. Huh? It's like the cow must give us milk every day, basically for the next 2 years. Look, there's a bigger conversation to be had about scheduling and the sustainability of international cricket and all the cricket leagues and so on. So that's a more complex thing. Maybe we'll come to that later. But I think it's a very, very forward-looking and a very futuristic strategy. I'm quite impressed that the selectors and the administrators have thought about it. We even have different coaches now. Believe it or not, Rahul Dravid is not in Zimbabwe, and VVS Lakshman is the head coach right now, right? And so it's Lakshman and KL Rahul who are the coach captain combination for the series. So India are even rotating coaches, like the rotating captains. In India, I've had 7 captains, I think, this year across formats. Everybody from Hardik Pandya as captain, where Rishabh Pant is captain. So Bumrah is captain, obviously, right, for the tests and so on. So I think having this pool of 40 players, if now that I think about it, I almost feel like, why didn't this happen before? Because we've always had this notion of, we should have the best possible team playing at any time. But the definition of best possible team has changed, right? We have obviously multi-format players, but a lot of players we have are actually single format players. So there's no reason to have the same teams playing, at separate times. I also remember, coincidentally, we had the Commonwealth Games 1 or 2 months ago, where there was this time women's cricket. But in 1998, when the Commonwealth Games happened in Malaysia, there was men's cricket in that instance. And actually, India had two different teams playing. So India had a strong team playing in Malaysia, and we also had the Sahara Cup in Toronto at the same time happening with
Oh,
Pakistan. So Sachin played in Malaysia. That's obviously more than 15 years old, but I actually think this is going to be more and more the case, and we've had players selectively choosing formats. Now it's the other way around. Now selectors are selectively choosing teams, and the way scheduling is going, I think this is going to be the way to go. And I don't mind watching. I think I enjoy watching Deepak Huda and Samson, and likes playing, as well as I like watching Shreyas Iyer and Dhawan and Kohli and so on. So I actually think it can only be good for the game, and we can start to enjoy more cricket over time. What's your take on it?
interesting. So I think, first of all, the 1998 Commonwealth wasn't like that. Those the good times where finally South Africa won something.
Yes, they did. They did.
Thankfully, they didn't choke back then. But
They did.
I don't know if this is a reaction to the times we are in, where Indian cricket has so much money and they want to milk the cow, as you said.
Yeah.
Or is it just a COVID thing where they cannot have like the best players traveling to every single location because, well, you have to have quarantine and etc. So you might as well send a contingent before, let them quarantine, be ready for Zimbabwe while the main contingent is getting ready for the Asia Cup. It might be a reaction to Asia Cup, but to be honest, I am not as big a fan of multiple Indian teams playing in different parts of the world. I want that India has a top 11. It could be 33 different players with 11 for each format. But I don't think the idea is we are playing individuals who are best for a certain format in these teams. We're just using this opportunity to try out and give people more chances for being in the team. And I would understand if we did this with just T20s, because there's a T20 World Cup coming in and you use the opportunity to try out more players in international situations. But having a team play ODIs against Zimbabwe with absolutely with not the best players in and not even prepping for the T20 World Cup, I just find it's sort of bizarre that I'm not getting to see my best 11 play there. Why is Kohli not there? Why is Bumrah not there, for example?
Yeah.
If they're being rested genuinely, I understand, but rotation for the sake of it, I'm not sure I'm a fan of that. However, the only one positive that I would take away from this is this is the only way we can make the minnows part of the game more so than earlier. So we don't want to be a 9-10 nation game. We want it to be a more global game. And the only way to do it is by making the biggest teams, which is India, England, Australia, play against the smallest teams. Otherwise, you just keep having the Ireland versus Zimbabwe or Ireland versus Netherlands kind of matches. And those minnows will never get to play in the big leagues unless it's the World Cup, which is very little exposure. So I'm contradicting myself with that little advantage there. But overall, if I am just watching it for a short term as a cricket fan right now for enjoyment, I would rather see my best 11 on the field.
I think you're spot on. Like the COVID point you mentioned is really true. I think that it necessitated having this deep stock, right? But I know we've talked about the Kohli captaincy before. I do think like bringing in depth was a big pillar of the Kohli captaincy, where we have 7, 8, 10 fast bowlers at any time who are ready to go. And we talked about the Australia series where, a Shardul Thakur, Washington Sundar suddenly came and, they just managed to carry the team, right? Without a Kohli in the team, without all of our fast bowling, without Shami and so on and so forth. So I do think that has necessitated the thinking. And I think this is a way of keeping all these players match steady, match fit. But I was looking at the FTP, for example, right? And like I said, the international scheduling is like a huge topic, so we won't be able to cover that fully. But I saw that in this 2023 to 2027 cycle, each team plays an average of between 130 and 150 games over all the formats, right?
And this is all formats, okay.
Over all formats, yeah. So I think Afghanistan is at the top with some 150 odd. I think I can't remember who's at the bottom. India is somewhere in the middle. India's in the 142. So that's about 35 games a year, right? 35 games. So I think a third of that is test matches. So, right, that's about 70 match days, 50 to 70 match days, plus the remaining time, right? Plus the remaining. So it's about 100, 120 match days a year, right? That's sort of what you're coming to. That's firstly just in international cricket. You overlay on top all the touring time, the practice games, and so on and so forth. And then you overlay the big elephant in the room, which is all the T20 leagues. And for Indians, of course, it's only now the IPL. there may be pressure for them to pay in Dubai or in South Africa, given who owns the teams. But you start to add all of that in, and you're already reaching a point where there's a lot of cricket, right? And one thing that I've genuinely appreciated is now the depth that we have. For every position, we have 2 or 3 or 4 players. So for me, it feels natural to have that kind of rotation going. But I agree, it can't be rotation for rotation's sake, So let's see how it evolves. But I'm just happy to see that, Sanju. I'm a big fan of Sanju Samson. So I'm just happy to see him getting a lot of
Plus one to
games.
that.
Right?
I think the whole nation is a big Sanju Samson fan. I don't know if you saw in the third T20 international against West Indies, I think Pandya was captaining us in that one.
Right. Okay.
And when they announced the team, when they announced Sanju Samson's name, that name got the biggest cheer across the stadium.
Oh, really?
And both Hardik Pandya and the commentator at that point was stunned, and they were both surprised. Oh, well, that's a famous name, clearly, that we have in our team right now. So yeah, Sanju Samson has a big fan following. It's just he needs to make the most of the run he's getting right now.
I agree. Like I said, we can keep the scheduling and stuff for another time. But how do you think? The most immediate thing coming up is the T20 World Cup. So how do you think India is shaping up, and how do you think the others are shaping up as you look ahead?
So I am actually very optimistic, keeping my emotions aside, just channeling my logical side. I genuinely believe India is much more prepared for a T20 World Cup than it ever has been. Primarily because I think we're doing two things a lot in the last 6-8 months. One, we spoke about how we're trying out a lot of different players to make sure we have the best combination on the ground. And so that's why making sure a Deepak Chahar gets his chance, making sure a Deepak Hooda making his chances count in the team. I think that's one big thing that India is doing, which is not relying on past reputation or pure IPL performances to make that selection. They're genuinely going in with giving the chance to all of this new blood or these new folks. So I feel that we're more prepared with the kind of players we're going in with. The second thing I really like, and I'm not sure if it's a Rohit Sharma thing, it is a Dravid thing, or it's a cumulative think tank thing, but we've put ourselves into situations forcibly and tried to experiment how we would approach the T20 game differently. Like that was the biggest problem in the last T20 World Cup, where we just had a template where we would have an anchor in the form of Rahul or Sharma, and then Kohli would also sort of play the anchor innings. And nobody was playing the all-out game from ball one. And I've seen that very different approach by both Sharma. I forget who the openers were against
Surya Kumar Yadav, Rishabh Pant opened.
Correct. So we're trying a lot of things with people and with positions and with situations where I believe at one point we were setting a score and we were cruising 10 plus runs and over. And at that point, it seemed like 180, 190 was very easily gettable. But I think the message from the team came that, hey guys, let's flip this situation. We're in a great situation right now. Let's assume we are chasing 200 plus right now. And that's what we want to get to in that situation. So I feel like we've put ourselves a lot into tricky situations. The only one thing that's bothering me going into this T20 World Cup is how much of a risk we will be open to taking with the big names or the elephants in the room. So will we still go with a 1-2-3 of Sharma, Rahul, and Kohli, which would in a way completely undo all of what I just said? Or are there going to be some big decisions taken where, hey, we're going to only play 1 or 2 out of these 3 in the top 3? So that's kind of where I am right now.
Yeah, I'm bracing myself for some kind of backlash from whoever listens to this, apart from you and me. I don't think Kohli has any space in this team. I'm just very, very clear in my head. Like I can see how even Hardik Pandya bats. He's batted from 3 to 7, by the way. I think that was very, very deliberate. Surya Kumar Yadav has batted from 2 to 6 in this team. Rishabh Pant has batted from 2 to 6 in this team. Shreyas Iyer is, for me, he does have a weakness against the short ball, but he has the ability to accelerate a lot more. I've not even started speaking about Samson, Deepak Hooda, right? So we have an extremely, extremely robust middle order. I just don't see where Kohli adds. And Kohli's been out of form. I know people don't like talking about it, but he has been out of form. So for me, he'll be a valuable member of the squad. I think he should be around the team, but I don't see a spot for him. First of all, I agree with everything you've said, right? In terms of how we've set it up, that we've managed to game almost a war game, these kind of situations. My worry is almost, the pitches in Australia posing a different challenge to the kind of T20 games we've been playing, right? So we were in England, then we were playing in South Florida and in the West Indies. Now we are here in Zimbabwe, then we'll be playing Asia Cup in, I think, the Middle East. But the pitches in Australia will be fairly different. So in a way, it helps the fast bowler. But how will a Samson play? How will a Shreyas Iyer play there? Right, those are questions that I have. And I also wonder if India knows its best 11 for the game, or if they will go through this rotation even during the tournament, because they brought in Arshdeep Singh. He's supposed to be a good Yorker bowler. They tried him in the middle overs as well. They tried Avesh Khan at the death. Deliberately, Rohit Sharma gave him the last over in the first game when India ended up losing. So we're putting many players in this situation, but do we know our best 11 yet? That for me is always the question. Or will they keep doing this, or we'll have different combinations to keep the other side also guessing? We'll have different combinations for different games and so on. So that's my worry going in. Having said that, I'm not really clear about where other teams' preparations are as well, right? Or I don't get a sense that others are pretty settled. West Indies look like shambles, but they always look like shambles and they turn up at the tournament. Shaheen Shah Afridi has been ruled out for Pakistan, which is a huge blow for them. Sri Lanka actually are looking quite good. Australia, I don't think I've played a T20 in a while, but they are going to have a few series, including with India going up. We'll get to see South Africa as well. So I still think there's some cricket to be played. But having said that, the selections will all be done, and then England will always pose a threat. And you've got New Zealand, who I think actually had a few scares against like Netherlands and so on, and even Ireland. So it's not really clear to me where the other teams are in terms of their preparation, but we'll see over the coming months. But I think it's actually a very even tournament going in, which is, I think, one of the good things. I can think of 6-7 teams who can make it to the semifinals at this point.
Okay, so let me put you on the spot. August 28th, India Pakistan. What's your top four? Or not what's your top four? What do you think will be the top four?
Oh, wow. So, I'll tell the easy one. So I know Rohit Sharma will be there. If he is fit, doesn't manage to twin.
If he's fit. I'm just saying, don't put your lens, but what
should be there.
What the management is going to do, in your opinion.
Right. So I think for India, Pakistan, we've so far been conservative. So my sense, even though we say, it's now pressure, it's like any other game, I think we will be a bit conservative. We'll go for some experience. I think the management will want Kohli there, Sharma there, in one of the top four. I mean, Kohli maybe three. I think Surya Kumar Yadav will be there. He's done enough to now cement his place. So that leaves one spot, which is the other opener. Given how much the management likes KL Rahul, I think it'll end up becoming KL Rahul. So we may be back to the same issue that you mentioned at the beginning, but they may spring a surprise and make Surya Kumar Yadav open with Sharma, and then have maybe Kohli at 4 and Rahul at 3 or something. So this would be my top 4. What do you think?
Yeah, I would have said the same thing. I was going to say that they will make the bold call of having one of Sky or Pant. I'm leaning towards Sky and Sharma as openers. Kohli will be a 3 or 4 depending on the situation, and will probably play round robin. Fourth will be KL Rahul. I don't think this management has the risk-taking ability to drop one of the 3, at least going into India Pakistan on 28th August. If things pan out very differently going into Asia Cup, South Africa series, and Australia series before the World Cup, we might see a different top 4 in the World Cup. But at least August 28th, I think these are the 4 that's going to be there.
Yeah. Speaking of top 4, there was some trivia you had sent me, I want to say more than 2 months ago now, which had a top 6, I think, top 5.
Okay,
top
let's
6
do that.
in it.
Let me share. Can you see my
screen? Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. So I sent this to you 2 months ago. Give me your think out loud for like 30 seconds, and then I'll let you know what this is.
Yeah, I thought this had something to do with like ducks in, I don't know, and I guess, test matches or something. Or it had something to do with like runouts. But it's like, just seems like a very, like, just as those two.
I mean, if it was runouts, you probably would have had Inzi
in it, right?
Definitely up there.
Correct. And this list is it's all recent players, and there's no real trend for me, right? It's like top.
One thing is they're all established batsmen. None of them,
correct.
Like any ducks or any of those metrics will definitely have some tail enders.
But there are other players who have equally high number of innings, right? Ponting and Sangakkara and Vaughan, Dravid. So those guys are not there. So I'm like, why are those guys not there and these guys are there? So I've been struggling.
Sorry. And for the folks who are listening, this is a list of 6 players. The question is, what is this a trend of? And we have Tendulkar at 18, Arvinda De Silva at 9, Nathan Astle at 9, Grant Flower at 8, Jack Callis at 7, and Kane Williamson at 7. It's a pretty tough question. I will give that to you. It was worth
So
thinking
the other thing I thought was like number of like 100 partnerships or 200 partnerships or something involved in. But again, there are other players I can think of who should be on this list. So yeah, that was my last guess. So what is the answer?
Yeah, none of the guesses are right. And I was hoping that the Tendulkar with a sad face there would have given you some hint on what this is. It's not a happy thing.
Out of 99 or something. No.
This is Nervous 90s.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I think it's Nervous 90s in ODIs. Because I sent it to you so long ago, I forgot myself. But I think this is Nervous 90s in ODIs.
Really? So Kane Williamson, huh? Okay. I didn't realize he had a case of... Wow, very, very, very interesting. Definitely something I'll use the next time I have to stump someone with a cricket trivia.
Yeah, we should probably have one more thing we can discuss, because I think last time we were given a lot of shit for making it a very long episode. It's just related to one single metric broadly, but I do feel that we stress so much on strike rate. We talk about strike rate and average for a batsman, and we talk about average and economy for a bowler.
Yeah.
Right. And my issue is that once a viewer is watching the game, you're also throwing in a fifth metric, which is runs needed per over. So RPO, right? So that's kind of the 5 metrics which are involved in the game. When a batsman walks out, and for those who may not know, strike rate is for a batsman is runs per 100 balls. Average is runs per dismissal for a batsman. For a bowler, average is similar, runs per dismissal. So runs given for every wicket they take. Economy is runs given per over. So runs given every 6 balls. And when you're chasing, the report is of runs per over, so which is sort of the economy. So my complaint always remains is strike rate should be done away with in cricket. We should not be calculating strike rate, because you're talking about runs per 100. Everything, if it's about runs per 6 balls, that's what it should come down to. So you report the bowler's economy in runs per 6 balls, you report runs needed while chasing in runs per 6 balls, and you convert all of the strike rates into runs per 6 balls. Because when someone comes and tells me, hey, he strikes at 130 or he strikes at 150, it does not make sense to me. But when you suddenly tell me a 150 guy is basically striking at 9 runs per over, that suddenly puts a lot of context to. So that's my complaint about the metric, and that's what I want to get your thoughts on.
So I have a few thoughts. I think when what you were saying triggered a lot of things as you were talking about it. Right? So number one is the 100. I was thinking about the 100, right? So as you know, that format is very different. They have a set of five deliveries. The concept of an over has changed. So for me, depending on the format, I've had the same gripe as you for strike rate versus economy rate. I'm like, why? I am like, who looks at strike rate? I just want to know runs per over needed and runs per over that this guy can score. I also thought they tried these supplementary metrics, like for T20 especially, you score a boundary or a 6 per how many balls. I think that was also something that they usually show, which again, like, I don't know why they do that. It doesn't really matter to me. It's more about how many you score. So I agree with like making it a bit consistent, but I also think given the 100 has come in, maybe the strike rate will come back even for a bowler, because it's out of 100 balls and each ball is and you can bowl sets of 5 balls or sets of 10 balls, right? So that's for me, take number one. Take number two is I actually think for test cricket, you need something different. So for example, I love strike rates for bowlers in test cricket. So a strike rate for a bowler is how many balls between each wicket that you take. And you look at someone like a Curtly Ambrose and you realize why he was such a great bowler, right? I mean, he may not have as many wickets as, I don't know, a Richard Hadley or a Kapil Dev. He only had, I think, 250 or 300 odd wickets, but his strike rate is something crazy like 19 or 20 balls. So imagine like if you bring him on, once every 3 or 4 overs he bowls, he's going to get you a wicket. If he bowls a spell of 8 overs, he's going to get you 2 wickets. That's just a mind-boggling statistic for me, right? So I also think for different formats, like for me, strike rate in test cricket is like, for a batsman, who cares, right? Like I almost want to know something else that makes it more useful. For limited overs format, I agree. You only care about number of runs to be scored per over, number of runs to be chased per over. So both for batsmen and bowlers, I think we should do that. The other gripe I have about cricket, and this is maybe my more like analytics, like kind of preference coming in, is I hate the way we predict scores. Like we do a very good job of this Duckworth-Lewis setting targets, chasing targets, but typically what you will see is a team has 30 overs, 150 runs. Score projection is 250 in 50 overs. We go at 5 runs per over. And I'm like, we can all do the math. Why don't we do something intelligent, which takes into account conditions, takes into account wickets in hand, takes into account opposition, and looks at some history and says, so this is the range of what the team can get, right? And then we always have a debate at, oh, what could be a par score? What could be a better score? So I feel like prediction when it comes to metrics can be improved because we've got so much data now from so many formats about individual players and about teams.
But that's weird, right? Because I think depending on the broadcaster and which country is hosting, you do have, I don't know, we've seen the WASP and all come in, right? Which is wickets and score predictor, and different countries trying it out, but they've never really stuck because eventually they've all come down to that simplified metric of just taking a standard runs per over guess for the next few overs. I don't know, maybe they failed or maybe it's not worth the investment.
Like I remember like Cricket also tried this. I think they weight your runs scored or wickets taken by the match circumstance. And they try to put that, especially during the IPL or during 2020, they say this is the runs, but this is the value of the runs that you scored. I'm not sure it really took off too much. I think some people do use it, but a more fundamental one is, I think, the one you were saying. I also am not a big fan of strike rates for batsmen. It's like something we borrowed from baseball and never thought about how it really applies. I agree. We should just change it to runs per over, whether you're a batsman or whether you're a bowler. Cool. I was going to say we are at half an hour, and as you said, we got some pretty serious feedback about the length. My last question I have is, have you been playing cricket? Have you umpired recently?
The answer unfortunately is no to both. I did end up playing cricket like maybe a month ago and I got run out when I was at 3. So I was really mad that day because I woke up at 6 a.m., spent 5 hours in the sun only to get run out at 3 and not get a single over to bowl. So it was a pretty crappy day. So
what kind of run out? Was it just second run miscommunication or was it like tight single?
It was, I don't know who was at fault. So this is an interesting story. So striker is one of our better batsmen. He had a row of 7 or 8 dot balls across a span of 2 overs. So he was not letting them go. He was genuinely trying a shot and missing. So I could see that in the previous 2 shots, he was very antsy to get off strike and he was tapping the ball to a nearby fielder and just running off. And I had to call out a loud no. So in my head, I had to be, okay, this guy is on a suicide mission. The next ball, he taps it towards mid-off and he just sets off. And the problem was both of us were ball watching and the ball was sort of in the middle of the bowler and mid-off. And the bowler ran through to the ball. And because I was watching the bowler, I wanted to see how far it is from the bowler. And by the time I looked at him, he was 3/4 down the pitch and I hadn't even moved from my crease. I shouted no. He had too much momentum towards me. So I was like, okay, screw it. I'm going to make a dash. I knew there was no way I was making it. And yeah, I got there. I was several yards short. We still don't know whose call it was. He says that it was his call because he's the one running to the danger end. And I should have trusted his call. But my trust on his call had completely gone down after seeing him in the last few balls. So that's what kind of happened.
Okay, well, here's hoping for more boundaries and sixes so you don't have to worry about taking too many runs. But yeah, that does sound painful to be standing in the sun and having to think about the dismissal through the rest of the morning. That's definitely sounds painful. Cool. All right. So until next time, Arpit, thank you. And we shall speak again.
Yes, this was awesome. We shall definitely speak again.